Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing the soft top on the Miata, and I'm doing it in a voiceover just because I'm filming with a new camera, action cam, kind of knockoff, GoPro knockoff, and its audio is pure crap. So the old top has seen better days. It's got some kind of vinyl repair going on. The window, it has a glass back window that was not stock, obviously. That didn't come with an NA. It's unzipped right now, but it's got some tears, some holes. It just really looks horrible. And what we're going to be doing today is what I think is the easiest way to do a soft top install. And we're going to mostly work from outside the car. We're not going to be taking the top off the car, and we're going to be staying outside until the very end, and I think that makes it super fast. So that's what we're going to attempt, and we'll show you how to peel everything back from the outside and get everything off. All right, so we're going to be starting here by taking off the rubbers on side moldings that are on the front of the car. So this is the top pushed all the way down, and we've got a couple screws here. And you have to take off the front molding and the bottom molding, which we'll see in a second. And we'll have to take it off the strip across the top as well. And what I like to do is put the screws back into the piece that it came out of, and a convenient place to put them is in the front floor well of the car. That way it's not going to get kicked or anything like that. So this is the other side of the car. We've got that rubber off, and we've got the B-pillar exposed. So this is the bottom part of those rubber moldings that go across, and it latches down right there where the just at the back of the door. So what we need to do is take out these little plastic tabs which are on the back. Now I've already kind of worked them loose, so it comes loose, but you can use some little tools like a screwdriver or something, but I recommend like a nylon tool like this, like a pry tool that has like a pointed edge. I picked this up from Harbor Freight for about $4, and they're not going to tear the rubber when you take it out, and you just kind of pry it off, kind of work it, just take your time and push that out. Then that whole thing will just sort of peel off the back, and that's what it looks like from behind. That's what those little plastic tabs look like. And that exposes a screw, which you'll be able to get out and remove a little clip. It's a little metal clip that goes on the bottom of that. And what you're going to need is this tool right here. This is the thing that's going to make it work and make it easy. It's about, also at Harbor Freight, about $2, and it's just a little ratcheting screwdriver that's very thin. And basically what you do is you apply pressure on the back end where that little knob is, and push it in and just ratchet it out, and you'll be able to get that thing out with no problems. This is why people take off the top, just to get to the screw, which is insane. Just get the right tool. So we've got that sucker off, and we are now able to take off the metal guide, which we did, which exposes the bottom part of the current soft top. And so you see some rivets on there. So we're going to drill out those rivets. And once we've done that, we'll be able to basically just peel that back. And I used a 5/32 drill bit to do that with the rivets that I had on the car. So the next thing we're going to get at is the back of this. And so this is where the rail attaches, and we're going to get in there with our pry tool and kind of work out a little tab that's in the back. And here's a better shot of it. The lighting was bad, but that's what that little tab looks like. It's just a little tack that kind of keeps the rain rail in place there. right underneath the B pillar. So once we get that out, then we can put the roof back up and we can sort of peel back what we exposed there. And so the middle of the B pillar shows you the screw and the tensioner spring, which feeds up along here. And there's a little bit of padding in there, which it goes across on mine anyway, but it feeds down and just goes all the way through. And so you want to make note about where that winds throughout the thing, and then it terminates here. Now we're not going to drill out this rivet right here. We're going to leave that. We're just going to pull it out. We're not even going to remove the spring. The spring is going to continue to be attached to the wire. We're just going to take out that little screw. And while this is up, I'll show you the bottom part of this contraption here. And down in here, normally you would have the soft top also riveted right there. And on mine it wasn't. This is where the rivet should have gone, but that was just flapping in the breeze. So basically at this point you may need to cut on yours. I didn't have to, but you may need to cut on yours to really be able to peel it back to expose that the tensioner spring. Alright, so now we're going to move this back, and the listings are still there, and that kind of helps hold it and the soft top in place. But we move it back to release the tension on there, and we can hold it up with some handy shop towels. This is a convenient tool for this job, trust me. And now that the tension's off, we can access that screw still. It's still propped up enough that we can get in there. And once you've fed it through, then there's nothing else holding the top on it. The whole thing peels off, and here's what it looks like. It's still on the car. Like I said, we didn't drill out that rivet, but with the screw removed, that's what the spring looks like. And you can check your wires, make sure they're okay. In mine, they're okay. A little bit dirty, but other than that, they're fine. And you can just kind of put that off to the side where it's not going to get pinched. And now's a good opportunity to kind of inspect the drains, make sure, clean up anything you need to, pour some water down there actually, just to make sure they're clear. I spent a fair amount of time with just the cleaning. So now you can inspect these listings as well, and you basically got these 3 bows that go across, and they have this little tab, and the soft top wraps around it like this and feeds into it. So when you peel that back, it's going to come right off the first tab, at least on mine, that's how it was. And then it'll wrap around kind of the second tab. And if you need to get in there and pry it open, you can do that with like a putty knife or something like that, just to give yourself a little bit more room, and then it'll come out. In my case, I just I cut it. I just cut that off so that I could get to it easily. But if you're not wanting to cut it, then you can pry it open. But in this case, it makes it simple because I can just take it, and this is how it wraps, so you can see as a sort of a reference. But it has a little tab that holds it in, and so this way I can just kind of pull it out. And then I'll show you a little section of what the tab looks like here. And there's a little plastic piece that holds it in right there. Alright, so now that everything's off, only the back is left on there, and this is bolted on because of the rain rail. And so what we're going to do, still haven't gotten in the car at all, is just cut this. So got my knife, I'm going to slice into here. The only thing you want to be concerned about is if in your car you already have straps that you're going to reuse, straps that hold the weight of the window. If you already have a glass top, then you want to be careful when you're doing this. But that exposes the entire back of the car. Now you got all kinds of room to work. And you can get in here to the rain rail and pop off the last tacks. I didn't even bother popping them off while I was in the car because it's going to be wide open anyway. So now I can easily access all this stuff on the carpet. And you don't forget that one in the middle, because that'll break if you pull on it too hard, so you want to get that one. But now I can get at all this stuff, and here's a shot of what the interior rain rail looks like. Now it comes in here, and there's little studs that stick out through the little brackets that attach onto the rain rail, and the brackets are what the tacks attached to. And there's one of the nuts that came off the stud. In fact, one of mine sheared off. So if yours are corroded like mine, then you may want to, use a little penetrating fluid or something like that to just spray some penetrating fluid in there, or just let it soak in for a little bit. I was using like no torque at all, and it just sheared off. So, but then again, my top was leaking badly, so I had a lot of rust in there. So take off all those, and this is what you're left with. Ugh, this thing has seen better days. It's cracked. It's brittle. It's dirty. The back, you can see that all those cracking where the studs poke through and all that stuff is just shattered. So, yeah, that was holding out no water whatsoever. And that's why when you get a top, you may just want to go ahead and buy the rail. Don't wait to inspect the rail. Your rain rail's probably screwed up. There's so much dirt in there, you could probably plant a flower garden. It's just piled up in there. So yeah, this is a lost cause. So I'm glad that I got the one with the top, with one of the tops with the rain rail attached. Now this belt line molding is what it's called. Is important to be careful with. So here are the studs that it's going to go on, but it's going to tuck up under, and it's a little hard to get a shot here of this, but it's going to tuck under. There's a little rubber flap right here, and you can kind of see it there. The rain rail needs to go under that flap. If it's not going under that flap, then water has a chance to get in, and it's not going to work. So it's basically the same way as your gutter on your house is going to be under the shingles. And the water is going to flow off of that into there, and so it's going to flow down and around to this drain. So now we have a really good view of it. You can check, make sure it's cleaned out. I use a little pipe, a little wire, like a coat hanger or something like that, to push it down. So now that all that's been done, clean the heck out of it, everything, we've done that. We've got these little straps in my case. So for this top, we've got straps to hold up the weight of the mirror, not the mirror, but the glass on the back. And these are going to go into the studs, like the third stud in on each side. And it's got these little holes pre-made, but in my case, I found these holes were just not big enough. So what I did was I was able to use like just a soldering iron. These are nylon. So a soldering iron went in there and just melted it just fine. And on the other side, you've got two other holes which are going to be used to put rivets through into the listings that go across the top of the frame. And so you're going to stick that little tab into the little listing guide there. That's going to hold it in place. And then you're going to drill through the guide, the little part that sticks out, the guide that sticks out, and into the listing itself twice. So on both of those two bows that you got there. And what you do is, since these are already drilled out, you can kind of, this is an easy way to measure, is getting those positioned correctly. Verifying that everything is the correct way, because there is a right and a left for these straps. So you want to read the instructions on this. They do go a specific way. And if you don't have it the right way, it's actually gonna fold over in kind of a weird way. So you can kind of see how it sticks out. The other one sticks out in the direction or not. And when it's in the right direction, it's going to lay flat like that. So going to go across. If you try to go the wrong way, it's going to poke up in the middle, and it's not going to work. So it's going to look ugly. So that's not right. So you get them flipped. So just make sure they're on the right side. Once you've got everything lined up, and you're positive that it's in the right side, then you can make sure that you've got holes set up to drill. And what I did was actually did a little hole punch with my marking tool, and punched it that way through the holes, and then drilled it out. And then I put a rivet in there to make sure it's the right size and the right distance apart, and then everything will be good. So anyway, that's what the rivets are going to look like once you get ready to punch them down. And you've got your handy little prop tool there, and when you go to drill these things, you know, adjust it to the angle that is convenient. You can just use that. You use your shop towels to kind of move things around as necessary to get it done. And like I said, I needed to melt out those holes a little bit more than what it was provided. They were just too small to fit the rivets even. So I used a soldering iron, actually. Old soldering iron. Didn't really matter that it got kind of messed up with stuff. And just kind of push it through gently. You don't want to go too far. But this is what I use to mark the hole with. So it's just this little center punch tool. There's a little spring on there. You get those for cheap, and just kind of go doop doop, and you've got it. So once these straps are on, that's the last piece until you start assembly. So what I've done is left the top out here in the sun to kind of just get flexible and be able to be stretchable a little bit. This doesn't matter too much as it turned out. That's what they sort of recommended. In my case, it was like kind of hot already, so being out in the sun caused it to be almost, I couldn't touch it. That vinyl is super hot. But we've got now the everything out, and once everything's exposed to the light, now is a good point to clean all these off. Just kind of make sure you get all this. And what we're going to do is start kind of in the middle, like we started with the disassembly, and just kind of get this listing in place. This is sort of the first listing past the main bow that goes across, the top, the headliner, and this is going to hold it for us, right? So it's going to keep it in position while we do everything else. So just like the reverse of the disassembly is, you want to get that tension cable fed through. And so it's got a little flap there, it's got to go through that. Then you got to feed it into the actual mechanism of the frame. So it's got to go around and down until you get it worked down to where the base of that spring is going to hit that screw, where the screw needs to go. So you've got it kind of loosely laid across the top. Tensioner's in, you got everything smoothed down, and you can locate everything to make sure it's in the proper place by getting it down around that B-pillar. And you're going to see where the flaps are and the little holes where the rivets go. And that's where you're going to get things set, is to get it located correctly with the rivets, so that you've got everything lined up. And we've got this other back flap. I'm going to do it correctly and actually rivet that in the right place on the frame. And as you can see, by starting in the middle, I don't have to be in the car and struggle with this. I can do it from the back and pop those rivets in, and it's going to be easy. So here it is just before popping the rivets in. I've just got the rivets in place so that it's easy to see. But you want to make sure those are all lined up and it's solid against there. That there's no folds or anything like that. That's right in the right position, because otherwise you'll be drilling them out again. But the holes I think are made pretty well on the top, so it's going to fit. Now there's a little flap of material down at the base of this, at the B-pillar, and you want to make sure that that's correct, and also that the rain rail is popped up underneath that little rubber tab on the belt line molding. So once you've got all that, you make sure that's right. You can fix the rest of the belt line molding later, but right there at the B-pillar, you've got to get it kind of right. Otherwise it's a problem later. So right in there is where it needs to be tucked in. So do that before you rivet in everything. Because it gives you a chance to manipulate it, kind of just mess with it, kind of get your hand in different positions underneath it, maybe something like that. As long as it's tucked in underneath there, back about maybe 6 inches, you'll be fine. And you can see down there, I've got actually got the rivets in already for the back flap portion. So just because that's easiest to do when the roof's up, and then this is easiest to do with the roof down or back just a little bit. I've got it propped up again with my shop towels. So now I got those rivets in there. I'm verifying where that everything's lining up correctly still. And this just kind of shows where it's going in terms of the top first, bow across the top headliner there. Same thing on the other side. We're going to get this worked through. It comes down and around. Tension cable comes in there. And, for the guides that we took off, one thing to note with cleaning is you don't want to clean like too much around the guides, because actually the parts where those things bolt in, you want to bolt them in, screw them in exactly where they were before. That'll make it easier for you to line things up later with the rubber, weather stripping and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's the screw where those go. So now we are putting in that flap. I've got a rivet in there, so you can see kind of where it goes. And you can see that there's plenty of room to work, from back here. Assuming you don't have a gigantic rivet gun. Mine's kind of large and cheap. Okay, so back on the other side of the car, at the bottom of the B-pillar, there's a flap of material that needs to be pushed into place. And it has holes already made, and you're going to use that tool again to get the screw in. But before you do that, you're going to want to take an awl or something like that, or just a screwdriver, and get those holes lined up with the holes in the frame where those little plastic tabs go. The plastic tabs go through the rubber that goes along the bottom of that, and you want to kind of ream that out just to make sure that they all line up, because it'll save you a lot of effort. So once you do that, you'll be able to get that screw in there. And if you had to, you could use a little stubby screwdriver, but it's not really recommended. Just get that tool. So I'm lining up the guide here, a little metal guide, getting it on the bolt holes, the screw holes, and you can kind of tell. You can see a little indentation or just dirtiness around where the head of the screw went. So by lining those up, you're going to be able to line up exactly where those guides were, and you're going to be much better off in terms of lining up the actual rubber piece, the weather strip. So you want to just kind of press it in lightly. At this point, it's not going to fit directly. You're just going to want to line it up, and you're going to press in the tabs, those little tacks at the bottom. So once that's secure, then you're going to be able to come in from behind and kind of make sure you press the back part of the molding into the metal guide. And you may not be able to really do this by hand very well. What I recommend is, again, getting your little nylon tool, and you can kind of like pry up on it and see where that thing is going to go up the track. So I'll get the little tool, and I get the one that's kind of shaped like a screwdriver here for this. And if you peel it back just a little bit, the lighting's not great here, but you'll be able to see right where it goes, and you can just kind of push it in to the guide. So it's not going to pop back out. It's going to be solid, and more importantly, it's going to make a good seal. So you'll be able to feel it. You know, they're hollow on the inside, so you'll be able to get that done. You put the middle guide there, the middle weather strip. You didn't have to remove it all. So then you put on the front one, and in the same way, you're going to put in with the little tool into the metal guide. You get those 2 screws back on. You can see right there, and then you're going to put on the little strip that goes across the top on the first bow there, and those screw down. So those are going to go through the pre-made holes in the top. And then at this point, the top is basically on. And the last piece is just going to be to put it on the little studs through the rain rail and all that kind of stuff. This is really the important part, is getting this rain rail situated. And like I said before, I'm going to reiterate, you want to take your time, get it worked under all the way around that little flap. And you can do most of this from the outside, but you may have to go in and out a little bit to get everything under there it is, the little flap that's on the belt molding. But that needs to be there, otherwise it will leak. So those are going to go over each stud, and what we're going to do is get the brackets installed. And initially we're just going to take the brackets and put them on like finger tight. Just make sure everything's lined up and everything's good. Make sure that all of our all the lines look good. There's no folds anywhere. And the order that it goes on, you can see the body of the car is right there on the left in this diagram, and you've got these little pads there. And I didn't take the pad I'm pointing at, the inner pad, I didn't use that. The studs in my car were not long enough by any means, so I did use the outer ones because I thought that might help with a little bit more sealing capability. But yeah, those brackets right there were not going on even 2 threads with the extra little pads on there. So I got those on, and you're going to want to torque these down according to in kind of a crisscross pattern. You can do one in the middle and then start on each edge on either side and kind of go back and work your way back and forth. But the pattern is in the instructions for the top. So everything is pretty much on. Now this is actually the next day. You know, when you first get this thing on, it is going to be drum tight, and literally, and it will not close. So probably what you're going to have to do is either let it sit out in the sun. I had one little problem there with it. That seam should not be showing, so I'm going to go back and revisit that. But let it stretch, put something on top of it. I ended up putting a couple of those wheels back there in the background on top of it overnight with some miscellaneous heavy stuff. I had some brake rotors laying around. I put those on top of it. Basically, stretch it out some, and eventually it'll come down. Now, the other thing you can do is get inside the car and adjust the latches. You can actually, when you pull this back, there's these little hex bolts, which you can just usually move my hand. Maybe the first time you have to get in there with a wrench, but you can move that back and just make the latch as open as possible. And that gives you a little bit extra space to close this thing. Once you've got it closed, then you can just double check all your lines. There's maybe some miscellaneous wrinkles that'll be in there, and those are going to go away. You don't need to worry about that. Just make sure that the clip is on there, that the seals are in the proper place, that it's not popping up above the windshield, you know, that top part, you know, anything like that. You're just looking at it, make sure everything looks tight, and that especially those straps are working, that, you know, the glass does not look like it's drooping or anything like that. And that pretty much does it. I mean, so now, you know, the bottom line is it didn't have to take off the frame out of the car. I did everything from outside the car except for the very last step, which is torquing down the thing, putting the carpeting back, I guess, you know, putting in those tacks. Super simple. I think the total work time, you know, not including cleaning, stuff like that, was maybe like 4.5 hours. So, you know, I kind of start and stopped a lot, just because it was, you know, kind of around Mother's Day weekend and stuff like that. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. It's super tight. The glass is phenomenal. Really good visibility out of the back. And, you know, I think it's going to last a long time. So, thanks for watching. If you like this content and want to see more, please subscribe. Give me a like, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.